Chamberlain. So
it is indeed lovely. If you like it cold and a bit wet, it's not so bad here in Abuja. Good morning and welcome. I'm Malpo Yusuf.
Yes, it's indeed drizzling in Lagos. Good morning and welcome. I am Bukola Koka.
Maybe it's because it's August 1, first day in the 8th month. Good morning and welcome. I'm Ayo Makinde.
Quite a number of things are somewhat uncertain. I mean, many just wondering which way the pendulum will swing. Yes, the president did give his broadcast yesterday, and lots of people listened to it. Labour inclusive, and they responded. They put up a statement about all of that, which we'll talk about, including the president's speech on the program here today. But we know that our neighbors, Niger Republic, grappling, trying to sort themselves out. ECOWAS did also give their own announcement in terms of what they expect. And before you know what's happening, you're hearing Mali, Burkina Faso saying they would join forces with Niger Republic. And as though West Africa hasn't had enough, we here are also facing our own scenario. Today, all eyes will be on the court. They'll be adopting their final briefs, the political parties, the Labour Party, the APC. You know that APM is also in court? Well, yeah, they say, well, that matter will be addressed. But parties are interested, PDP inclusive. They're all focusing, just waiting to see what happens thereafter, after those briefs. And then tomorrow, is tomorrow still going to be or not? Because Labour statement, after listening to the president's speech, they just say, look, it's not the silver bullet that Nigerians expected. So what does that mean? And it was only yesterday we were saying, look, states needed to ramp up their own action, decisive action about providing palliatives. So how will all of that play out in the wake of the president's speech? So this is where we always like to remind you, don't forget, you can begin to let your comments pour in concerning what you think of the president's comments, his speech, question about providing palliatives, Labour's narratives, which we will tell you, or if you want to wait and hear some of our guests speak up before you weigh in, no problems. We welcome that as well. But it promises to be an interesting week. We started saying that yesterday anyways, that this week, what a week. And don't forget, they're still screening the ministerial nominees today as well.
How did that go for you? Let us know what you thought. I mean, if you were able to watch what that... I mean, if you're able to catch the screening as it was happening live, were you disappointed at some of, well, I don't know what you expected first. If you met your expectations, you can let us know.
Oh, boy.
But if it didn't, if you were surprised at, some of the treatment that some of the ministerial nominees got, you can also let us know. If you were also quite, pleased by some of the drama. Some people talking about inconsistencies, trying to prove when they were born and when they started school. You can also let us know what you made of it. I do hope that you are following it, because it's going to continue today, and we will certainly be there at the National Assembly bringing you every minute detail.
Yeah, so I know Buki also kept watch on that. So I don't know. They will have their fair share on what's going on in Lagos. But Ayo Buki, did you get any response concerning how the whole thing played? I know you also listened to the president's speech, by the way.
Well, Chamberlain, I can't just... We said it yesterday, it's going to be a heavy week. And it has started heavy. In fact, and it wasn't until yesterday morning that a good number of people knew that, okay, the president was going to have a speech.
political emolument.
But that wasn't the word used, but it just sounded right.
Yeah, well, you know, even ahead of the emergence of that long-awaited list, there had been a lot of talk about the need for the president to balance, you know, political reward with, you know, economic competence, professional competence, so to speak. But it's significant that Chimeling started with what the African continent, West African sub-region was beginning to look like, you know, whether it be Burkina Faso, Mali, and now we have Niger. Over the weekend, we kept our eyes on that country, particularly with the outcome of the coup, with Major Chiani taking over government. And it will begin to seem as if, you know, what's it going to look like? There were projections about whether Niger would also align with Russia. Who knows what Russia is offering, you know, these countries on the African continent that are beginning to, put up loyalties with that part of the West. So it's interesting that Nigeria, you know, is coming up with this speech, the president, to be precise. It's significant for Nigeria to show leadership at this point in time. And Mr. President had said that, you know, there must be, you know, democracy, return to democracy. And he has, in fact, called for a conference that will be held in Abuja to discuss the state of affairs in Niger. Coming back to that speech, it was heartwarming for many Nigerians to listen to the president talk about subsidy interventions, even though there's a debate. You know, some people would say that there is it's really a continuation of subsidy, you know, withdrawing subsidy from one part of the economy and, you know, applying it to the other part of the economy. But then again, it's important, you know, that you know, there's a cushioning of the impact of the withdrawal of subsidy for many Nigerians. It's been difficult in the past few weeks, you know, just to cope with the high price of the pump price of fuel and its impact on the other aspects of the economy. But now it's the implementation that is critical. And the transparency in the, you know, execution of the application of this 500 billion naira, you know, amount that will be distributed to other areas of the economy. And why is it difficult? You know, why is it taking those buses, those CNG buses, why are they taking so long in coming? We were told sometime 2 weeks ago that, you know, we were going to be bought locally, and then the supplier was delaying. So all of these questions we're going to be asking for you in the course of the program this week. It promises to be, of course, an interesting week. And, you know, the culture of take a bow and go was also mixed with, you know, the ministerial nominees doing a pitch of their capacities. So Nigeria does have a lot to offer. We have competent people, but what remains to be seen is how they will apply their professional competence when they indeed take up that challenge, take up their offices. So it was not all blanket, you know, no scrutiny for the ministerial nominees. It was indeed interesting to listen to what they indeed have to offer. So, yeah, we were interested in knowing your thoughts about what you saw. And, of course, the screening is continuing today. Markwe and Chamberlain.
Okay, so there you go. Yes, indeed. But let's jump right at it and bring you some of the dailies here today. We've got The Guardian first. Of course, they focus on that speech by the president yesterday, and they lead with it. Tinubu justifies reforms, unveils 500 billion naira package to ease pains. That's a big lead on the front page of The Guardian here today. So, Tinubu presidency, road to 100 days, reforms and palliatives. And you get to see highlights of that. MSME to get 125 billion naira amongst them all. 1 trillion saved from subsidy in over 2 months. 200,000 metric tons of grains. Yep, you also see that. Approval of infrastructure support fund for states. We just got several, which we'll focus on as we progress here today. And then Labour, FG meet again in last attempt to stop tomorrow's protest. Don't forget the operative word there. Protest. Does it qualify? Is it used interchangeably with the word strike? Is it a one day? Would it move from just tomorrow to days? Who knows? The thing is, government cannot afford to just let this fester, cannot afford not to address what the issues are. But this speech by the president suggests it was an attempt to stave off this protest so people can kind of see where they are, where their mind is, what they're doing about what you're all going through. So that's what we want to hear from you as well concerning what he spoke about. And then look at this. Super Falcons to earn $60,000 each for making second round. Whoa, very, very nice. So,
is it $60,000?
Yeah.
Oh, that's certainly very good. Very encouraging.
Making second round. Wow.
A real incentive for them to put in every effort to, who knows, get to quarterfinals at least.
Ooh. Well, they need to. Well, you never can tell. It's football, so anything can happen. It doesn't matter who they face next. England, whoever. It's a game. They're all 11 players in there, so
one game at a time.
With grit, just go for it. Grind out whatever you need to. Just leave it all on the pitch, and you never know what you might come up with. So we're keeping an eye on that as well for the Falcons. So well done, very good one yesterday. Even though a win would have been very good, but hey, we're still in the tournament. Remember, Olympic champions are out, and we're still here. Well done. That's the Guardian, anyways.
Leadership newspapers is the next right. I'll tell you why I'm giggling in a bit. Oh, well, Chamberlain. Who knows? I mean, what side jobs will be taken on very soon. But take a look at this. There's nothing to smile about. The lead story there. Hardship. Tinubu begs for understanding. Labour insists on strike. Very much like what we've seen on the front page of The Guardian, couched a little differently on the front page of the leadership. Look at it here. Federal government rolls out more palliative measures. So they put this palliative measures for you in infographics so you can immediately get an understanding of what has been done. You see there 3,000 units of 20-seater CNG-fueled buses for public transportation, 200 billion naira to invest in MSMEs and SMEs, 50 billion conditional grant to 1,300 nano business owners. So that's also there. And look at this, 500,000 hectares of farmland for food security, 100,000 hectares of wheat and cassava, and 550 billion naira to cultivate 150,000 hectares of rice and maize. Now, why I was giggling, just a few weeks ago, about 2 weeks ago, had this program, a hard copy, and the guest I had was a farmer. And you would not believe how many people have shown interest in that particular episode of the program. Whoa. And how many calls I have received. Everyone wanting to speak to the farmer I brought to my program. Consultation, nice. They want to talk to him. And I'm like, oh, really? Are we all going back to the land? This is a good idea. So who knows? Maybe if the president gets his policies right and the implementation is going right, do you know how many more people might be going back to the land? And if security, because that's what the farmer emphasized, needs to be fixed, if that is fixed, who knows how many more people? Maybe he will be declaring an Operation Feed the Nation without actually saying so. Who knows? But you'll find details on page 4 of the paper, perhaps also an analysis for you. But take a look at this. Head of service accuses MDAs of abusing recruitment waivers. What do you expect them to do? I mean, come on, unemployment is at over 30% in the country, and everyone is looking for a job. And that's usually what's going to happen. Page 7, there's no reason for them to do so. I'm just saying, that is the circumstance we found ourselves. Page 7 is where you see the story. Diphtheria kills 83 in 7 states. And the FCT, so it doesn't look like this is tapering down, and that's suddenly a cause for concern. Excuse me. Diphtheria, usually symptoms can be misunderstood for something else, but please, if people are presenting sore throats and other cold conditions, they should have a high level of suspicion that it might not be the ordinary cold.
Whoa.
It could be something else. So you might want to check
we all
page
have
7.
cold just like that, the flu. You know, it just comes naturally with the season.
Yeah, it does. So that's usually when people present those symptoms, that might be the first thing that doctors might be thinking of. But with this, death rate, perhaps they need to start looking at, having the high level of suspicion for diphtheria as well and testing even further.
Oh, gosh.
Innovation, UNESCO backs Oshibajo's organization. That is also there. Page 6 is where you'll find details. I'm going to leave it there for leadership newspapers.
And turn to the Nigerian Tribune. It does attempt, to present the entire heartbeat of the nation all at once, capturing everything happening from the FCT down to the states. But listen to this. It begins with the president's nationwide broadcast. Salary review coming. 125 billion naira to energize MSMEs. That's the president's speech. Approves buses for tertiary institutions. Removes restrictions on students' loans. Sanwo-Olu okays 50% fare reduction in BRT ride. Water transportation. So that's also cherry news for Lagosians from yesterday. And it's not just the high capacity buses, according to the governor. The yellow and black buses will also be reducing their transportation fare by 25%, and that's supposed to commence tomorrow, I believe, August the 2nd. But, mixed reactions are trailing the president's speech regardless. Let's take a look at a few. Experts express concern on loan moratorium, roles of other tiers of government. Of course, there was some, uncertainty around the working capital loan that is supposed to be paid back over a period of 60 months. Loans to manufacturers that have high potential of turnover. We're going to be asking all of those questions for you later on the program today. Ogwe commends president, says powerful team needed to implement policy. Of course, that's a follow-up on our sister program, Politics Today, yesterday, by the way, you can catch up on that on YouTube. Speech done to convince organized labor not to embark on protests ascribed to the PDP presidential candidate's aide, Atiku's aide. And Labour doubts his ability to control inflation, gasoline prices, insists on strike. And just above the nameplate, there's this one: Oyo workers protest, lock secretariat. What's the reason? Demand palliatives, payment of salary deductions, leave bonus, come to round table, only 2 months salary deductions owed. That's ascribed to the government. And in Osun as well, Osun CSOs stage protest over non-provision of palliatives. Those are the issues. It appears that the palliatives are coming quicker in some states than the others. What's the reason for the delay? Where is the presidency's or the federal government's implementation team? There seems to be a need for clarity over how this will be executed across the nation. In Adamawa State, we're hearing that residents are breaking into government houses in search of the palliatives. So there needs to be a quicker response in implementation. Let's leave it there for the Nigerian Tribune.
This Nigeria is next, and it is also leading with the president's speech, and that's what you have on its front page. Fellow Nigerians, I feel your pains, says Tinubu. Approves 100 billion naira for procurement of 3,000 CNG buses. Earmarks 125 billion naira for MSMEs to create minimum wage. Removes restrictions on students' loan processes. All of that you find on page 4. Right under the picture on the front page, of course, that picture is that of the president decorating the newly appointed Chief of Army Staff, along with others. Wike 14 ministerial nominees face Senate screening. Ex-Rivers Governor, I'll assist the president to deliver service to the people. Stories you'll find on pages 5 and 18 of the paper today. Now this, right beside the nameplate, FCCPC deletes all approved loan apps. What does that mean? Did you receive any of those text messages? Well, details you'll find on page 19 of this Nigerian newspaper. Strike Senate initiates meeting with Tinubu, NLC. I'm still a little confused. Is it a strike or a protest? Well, a strike is a protest, but is it a strike or protest?
The organized labor, took time to clarify last week that it's going to be a rally, a protest, not a strike.
So let's just
but
say...
it's easily misunderstood as a strike because of the magnitude and, the implications of what it would look like.
Let's just say that it's a nationwide protest. Rallies. Okay, so now you know. That's this Nigerian newspaper today.
All right, let's take a look at Daily Trust then. Daily Trust is a very next one here. And of course, they also focus on that speech. Labour faults Tinubu's broadcast, insists on tomorrow's protest. Will intervene on our policies if necessary, describes to the president. Announces 200 billion naira for agric interventions. So maybe there will be more agric inquiries moving forward. 75 billion naira to strengthen manufacturing sector. We'll see what man thinks about that. President's broadcast deceptive. Atiku. I know. Senate leadership to meet presidency, NLC over planned strike. So, wow, what a week is going to be, isn't it? And then some party politics. Scramble for APC's vacant positions intensifies as NEC meets tomorrow. So that's what you get to see right here on the front page of the Daily Trust here today. And then Super Falcons earned 46 million naira each for picking World Cup round of 16 tickets. So that is also a very, very good one here. So they give me the naira equivalent. So, yeah, that's Daily Trust this morning.
Well, New Telegraph has this one. Federal government plans 400 billion naira intervention for manufacturing, MSMEs, agri sectors. So that's what you find right there on the front page of New Telegraph. They also have this: no alternative to hardship from subsidy removals, according to Tinubu. Says federal government labor to determine new minimum wage. Okay, so we'll have to figure out where that was in the speech, because Labour said they didn't see it. Okay, states over 1 trillion naira saved from subsidy removal in 2 months. Hints on possible intervention in rising fuel price. OPSN Lord's intervention says gesture will revive dying sectors. Broadcast deceptive, uninspiring. That's according to Atiku. So pages 2 and 8 is where you get details. You also see here, despite broadcast, NLC insists on strike, doubts Tinubu's ability to control inflation, fuel price. Senate intervenes in impasse, says action can plunge Nigeria into deeper economic woes. Oil cabal powerful, but government dealing with them. That's according to Bajabiamila. The story is on pages 3 and 5. You also see right there, following the story, ministerial nominees take a bow and go. Senate tells Wike 8 others as it screens 14 nominees. Oh yes, they were keeping count of how many people were told to take a bow. 9 in total.
Well, former Kaduna governor take a bow to today and go? Would he want to just say a thing or two before he goes?
I don't know what to say. Maybe it's in their interest that he takes a bow and goes. But the media will certainly want to hear a word or two from him. It all depends. We'll see. Oh, well, he never shies away from questions. So depends on how many answers they want. Look on top of the nameplate there. Cashless policy. POS deals rise by 51.47%. to 5.87 trillion naira. That is also there on the front page. You have a number of other stories. President removes restrictions on student loans, approves buses for students in high institutions, halts arbitrary raise in sundry fees by institutions, and Lagos announces 50% slash in bus fares. Let us know how that's going, because we understand that even the downfall buses are affected by this price slash. So when you do, that's supposed to take off from Wednesday. Let me not get ahead of myself. It's supposed to take off from Wednesday. So it's interesting how Lagos State has implemented this. in terms of also affecting even the buses not directly operated by Lamata. But I think there is something that stands out, the fact that it would seem that it's only Lagos that has any organized transport system operated within the state, which is controlled by the state government. I think a lot of states need to look into that.
I've got one question for the government, though. What is it going to do about those thugs who are consistently harassing and extorting motorists?
Well, motorists, or you mean bus drivers?
Sorry, the drivers.
The bus drivers.
Yeah.
So I think that will be, a question to raise. But who knows? Because if this is affecting downfall buses, other states do also have organized transport sector, the Road Transport Workers Union.
That's that's the team INEC usually uses.
So let's see how they can organize them into, a way of making sure that transport fares come down in those states. I mean, you go to any state, you see the buses, the local buses, they're colored in the state colors, or colored according to how they have been codified within the state. So I don't think that even if you don't have big buses, I don't think that state governments should just throw up their hands in the air and say we can't do anything about it. Yeah. What might be difficult, though, will be the kekes, which in some states are more in use than buses or vehicles. I mean, kekes, tricycles, just in case you're wondering what I'm talking about. Are not as organized as that, but we'll see. With plenty of thinking and innovation, you never can tell what they'll come up with.
We need to know how much those traps are making. It's in trillions. But we look away. Yesterday was read the headline. What? A native doctor paid 320 million naira ransom.
Chamberlain, do you want to change professions?
No, little things that we look away from. There's revenue just around us, all around us. We just need to unlock it.
Native doctor. I don't think it was doing trado medicine, but who knows? I mean, what do I know?
Low-hanging fruits.
And Bukola.
Ayo knows about a thing or two on low-hanging fruits.
I don't know about that, but about the yellow buses, they are yet to make that announcement. I recall the governor saying yesterday that they will make their own announcement about a 25% reduction in transport fares in Lagos. But the question is, what part of the palliatives are they being offered? I imagine that they're going to make that, explanation when they make their announcement. I believe it's one of the unions that will be speaking on behalf of the transport, the yellow bus transporters, because they're also buying fuel at 500 naira per litre. So is the government intervening to convert their buses to CNG powered? Well, we will get to know all of that. But I can't resist the urge to speak to the increase in turnover for POS operators. Little wonder that they're experiencing a high profit in this season, particularly because since the Naira redesign policy, crisis trailing that, banks have refused to return to the 10,000 Naira per reduction. What you get when you use your ATMs now is 5,000 Naira. So there's 35 Naira deduction on every 5,000 Naira. And what you're allowed to withdraw per day is 20,000 Naira. But of course, when you go to your own bank, you can withdraw, I believe, more than that. So the CBN needs to intervene in this regard and ensure that banks return to status quo, to the 10,000 Naira withdrawal per use of ATM. Let's quickly take a look at Daily Independent. And, the Daily Independent captures it accurately. Despite FG's assurances, Labour insists on strike protests. That's exactly why is Labour not, confident in the president's speech. A few riders, aviation, railway unions join NLC planned action. Senate appeals to Labour, moves to intervene. Let's leave it there for the Daily Independent.
And leave it there for the rest of the papers. Hope we've been able to give you the basic highlights. Well, that presidential speech also caught our own attention. That's up after this break. Do stay with us.
My fellow citizens,
this is President Bola Tinubu's second nationwide broadcast after his inauguration on May the 29th. And it comes at a time when the nation is still grappling with the rise in the price of petrol as a result of the removal of fuel subsidy convoluted by high inflation, industrial action by resident doctors, and threat of strike action by organized labor. and the president wasted no time in making a case why subsidy must go and what is done so far.
To be blunt, Nigeria could never become the society it was intended to be as long as such small, powerful, yet unelected groups hold enormous influence over our political economy and the institutions that govern it. The whims of the few should never hold dominant sway over the hopes and aspirations of the many.
The gains of subsidy removal are already trickling in, according to President Bola Tinubu.
In a little over 2 months, we have saved over ₦1 trillion that would have been squandered on the unproductive fuel subsidy, which only benefited smugglers and fraudsters. That money will now be used more directly and more beneficially for you and your families. For example, we shall fulfill our promise to make education more affordable to all and provide loans to higher education students who may need them. No Nigerian student will have to abandon higher education because of lack of money.
While appealing to Nigerians to show understanding, the president explains how 200 billion naira of the 500 billion naira loan will be deployed to support transportation and agriculture across Nigeria.
We have made provision to invest 100 billion between now and March 2024 to acquire minimum of 3,000 units of 20-seater CNG fuel buses. These buses will be shared to major transportation companies in the state using the intensity of travel per capita. Participating transport companies will be able to access credit under the facility at a maximum per annum 9% interest rate with 60 months repayment period.
Part of measures to support manufacturing enterprises and MSMEs is a provision of single-digit loans by the federal government.
We are going to spend 75 billion between July 2023 and March 2024. Our objective is to fund minimum of 75 enterprises with great potential to kickstart a sustainable economic growth, accelerated structural transformation, and improved productivity. Each of these 75 manufacturing enterprises will be able to access 1 billion credit at a maximum of 9% per annum, with maximum of 60 months repayment for long-term loans and 12 months for working capital.
The president has consistently maintained that the challenges of today is for a greater good in the future. Whether or not citizens agree with his position will be interpreted by their response as individuals and groups in the coming days. Jeffrey Uzongo, Channels Television News.
All right, welcome back. So, yes, we'll talk about the president's speech and get reactions. We've got two gentlemen here with us in the studios. Aliyu Aldu, former member, APC Presidential Transition Committee, Media Strategy Subcommittee, and Yunus Tanko, Chief Spokesperson, Labour Party, PCC. Gentlemen, good morning. Thank you for coming on today.
Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning. Thank you for having me this morning.
Yeah, and we will also go to Lagos. We'll got a guest there as well in time. So let me start with you, Aldu. Yes, I know that this speech is out there. You've seen some of the reactions from Labour and several other persons about this speech. So the points that they've raised, do you think that, well, okay, my opinion of that they do have a point, or you think, look, the speech suffices?
They do have a point. I mean, many times we have always said something that the good thing about having the government we currently have is the fact that we are very, in touch with reality. We are patriotic. We understand, like the president said yesterday, we understand what the feelers are. And then we understand the reason for doubt, for concerns, because years after years, government after government, Nigerians have heard sort of promises, lofty speeches, and but basically nothing to show from it. But this is different. The president we have now is different. We have always said it from before he emerged as presidential candidate of the APC, and after he emerged, right up till this second, if anything at all, the speech yesterday should sort of, put Nigerians' mind at ease. Like, there's emotion. There was emotion in that statement. That was a father talking to children, brothers, sisters, and compatriots, and the choice of words in the speech, like the tough, anxious, uncertainty, this clearly shows that the president is in touch with reality. He knows what's going on. He knows how Nigerians feel. He's got people on the field that give direct feedback on what the reality is. We have a set of teams within the system who are very hard from within. Try to we have deliberately not insulated ourselves from the general public so as to understand this is what it is. Send SOS internally when the need arises. And the speech basically covers a whole lot. And all we can say at this point is for every single Nigerian stakeholders to let's give ourselves a chance. If we look at this and forget about the distrust between Nigerians and government in the past, there's a lot to look at. A couple of weeks from now, we tell, the implementation. He has a track record of not taking on tasks he can execute, and he's the best in terms of execution in public office till date. He has showed that while he was in Lagos. He hasn't done anything different from what he's done while he was in Lagos. Take time to plan, understand the problem, come up with a solution that will solve the problem, sustainable solution that will solve the problem with a plan to prevent the problem from reoccurring. If you see the palliative, if you see the way it's been done, it shows that it's sensitive, it's scientific, it's pragmatic, and we have every reason to be confident that, like he rightly said, the dark days are over and we are stepping into brighter days.
Well, Dr. Tanko, did they hit the key issues for you, the speech?
Permit me to share these thoughts with you this morning. They said a society that, is more or less being united by corruption can be sickening, very sickening. The only succor there is that no amount of how falsehood holds sway, a pinch of truth in a filled, falsely inflated balloon will deflate. This is what I mean. We have a government of a political party that has promised a lot of things throughout its tenure of that particular party. Almost let's say 10 to 20% of the promises that were being made, none of them see the light of the day. We were groaning in pain. Nigerians were in serious pain at that particular point in time. What we have now is a government that is not prepared, ab initio, knowing fully well the challenges that the former government has put Nigerians into. It now double its pains and pang within a short period of time. Now, within that period, here you are, appealing to the Nigerian people with a forcefully sentimental way, trying to get their minds and say, look, we can do this, that a government in which your party belonged to, ab initio, which has already put this particular pain on Nigerians. Now you are now clamoring, giving them a watery and, appealing statements that you're going to do A, B, C, D, exonerating yourself in a way from the pain and pang that's already been inflicted on the Nigerian people, and providing with all due respect, forceful presentation that can put a lot of people in a lot of danger. I am not really surprised because, like he said, these are some of the things that they are used to doing, giving Nigerians hope and dashing it at the last minute.
What part is false here?
Good. Now, when you say you are going to build, you are going to do A, B, C, D, The question you want to ask is that this humongous sum of money already, at the first place, has it even been budgeted for? Is it part of the budget that you are going to use, or you are going to present another supplementary budget to take care of this particular large sum of money that you want to do to the Nigerian people? And what are the time frames? How do you intend to execute this within the short period of time? The salary that you are trying to tell the Nigerian civil servant that it is coming, how long is it going to come? We are all witness to what has happened with the ASU. All of the things that have happened with the Nigerian Labour Congress within the years, none of them have been actually seen the light of the day. And then here you are now trying to use a kind of a sweet-quoted word in order to dampen the spirit of the Nigerian people.
What part are you asking if it's been budgeted for? Because I see here where he says, our plan to support cultivation of 500,000 hectares of farmland all year round, that's a farming practice, remains on course. To be specific, 200 billion naira out of the 500 billion naira approved by the National Assembly will be disbursed as follows. And he gives the breakdown of how that will be. So this has been approved by the National Assembly.
Approved by the National Assembly. I'm talking about the total amount of 125 billion naira, if I'm not mistaken. That's all a large sum of money. It's a large sum of money. And how do we intend to, where are the source of this particular money? How do we intend to appropriate them according to the interests of the Nigerian people? This has to be justified.
Okay, well, I see here, I mean, talking about that 125 billion naira. He says out of the summer, we'll spend 50 billion on conditional grants, 1 million nano businesses between now and March 24. Our target is to give 50,000 naira each to 1,300 nano business owners in each of the 774 local governments across the country. Well, some people will argue that the president already got an approval for $800 million, which has not been spent, at least to the best of our knowledge, unless it's been spent secretly. Mr. Audu can let us know. But to the best of everyone's knowledge in Nigeria, maybe to the exclusion of others, $800 million has been approved by the World Bank, also through the approval of the National Assembly. So some people will say, okay, perhaps there is money here to implement this. What I really am curious about is whether there is, a system to actually implement this. For instance, identifying, and I think this would be to you, Mr. Audu, identifying who these business owners will be. Is there a modality? Are we clear on that? Because part of what has really agitated the minds of many Nigerians, initially when the president said they're going to give 8,000 naira to 12 million households, a lot of people said, look, it's not like as if it's a bad plan. First, 8,000 naira is very little money. But from our experience, it has not been distributed in a fair and equitable manner, in a way that people can say, oh, yes, indeed. Even if it was not a lot, people actually did get these monies. And that's been the concern. So for a number of people, how do we know that this will not be subject, once again, to corruption, to squandering? Are there clear modalities by which businesses that do qualify for these grants and for these loans are able to get them? Do you have any confidence that our system can actually support the implementation of this?
Yes. I mean, it's understandable that we have concerns, we have doubts. I mean, like I said earlier, from where we're coming from, it will be very, unhealthy to not expect such concerns. But now, let me talk about what you mentioned earlier. We have the vulnerable sectors in our system that are largely undocumented, let alone banked. However, if we are systematic and we are being scientific, we understand the fact that in every community, no matter how rural, we have your rural, semi-urban, then urban. No matter how rural every community is, when you go there, the traditional structure, the mosques, the churches, they know where the poorest and the most vulnerable people in society live, because when they collect tithe, zakat, sadaqah, all of this they do in the religious houses, they collect from people who can give. They know who they give it to. So
is that the system they're going to?
No, it is. I mean, that is an informal system that exists. But for us to document an informal system like the nano, I'm not even talking about the nano businesses right now. Let's look at the vulnerables, like the ones that were targeted with the 8,000, per for 12 million household. It is very easy. We have a lot of underemployed and unemployed young graduates who are very energetic and vibrant that can be deployed within a space of weeks to months to the most remotest part of the community. We have digital banking as we speak right now. We have all manner of digital banking that are operating well and virtually. All of this with technology can be deployed to the remote areas, gather this data in a matter of weeks, get them documented, get them banked. Now, let me explain something.
Under what ministry, please?
I mean, I haven't quite seen the structure of the new cabinet, what's going to move around. If I were to run on the previous structure we ran, we had the humanitarian ministry and social development. I mean, the Ministry of Youth and Sport Development, can come in here. The Ministry of Labor, can come in here. The whole lot of ministry, it's a project. Right now we are in a crisis, and it's a project that will involve a lot of, you're going to put up a project team that will involve a lot of traditional systems. That the goal is to get to these people, these vulnerable people, get them documented. Now, 12 million households, even though that's being reviewed as we speak, 12 million households, if we look at the average membership of a household in such vulnerable areas, we look at 2 to 3 per household.
I don't want to dwell on that because it's being reviewed, so we never can tell.
Okay, now let's go back to the
50 billion on conditional grant to 1 million nano businesses.
Good.
Between now and March 2024.
Good.
But you sound as though there isn't any concrete plan yet.
No.
To implement this.
No. What I'm saying, implementation is what hasn't taken place. There is a plan. This is a plan. What he has said is a plan. There are other plans that have not been revealed, that couldn't have been revealed in his speech. What is left is implementation.
Okay, let me come to other guests here. Let me quickly ask you about, you mentioned how this is putting a lot of people in danger. I wasn't quite certain what you were talking about when you said that.
Well, what I'm trying to say is that a lot of hope will be built. I'm thinking that probably, yes, something good is coming to the Nigerian people, and everybody will now be well structured and start thinking that it's possible. And then before you knew it, you found yourself in a ditch because the promises that had already been done in the past have not been fulfilled. And so what you will have is double wahala for dead body, not like Fela has said in the previous time. Because we're just coming out from a very dangerous situation, and now we're going back into a dungeon. That is exactly what I mean.
Yeah, but what would you have had the president do? Because some people will say, look, this subsidy on petrol, almost all the candidates, did say that this thing had to go. It had to go. It was not sustainable in the manner in which it was being implemented. It was seen that the president decided to bite the bullet even in his own inaugural speech. And from then on, it went. And this is where we currently are. What would you have had him do?
Well, you see, the problem is that when you, there's a word in which when you lie, you look for another lie in order to cover the first lie in which you've lied. So it continues like that. The problem started when you want to legitimize an office holder. And so you are trying to play to the gallery. And so in playing to the gallery, you shot yourself on the foot. Right from the beginning, the word issue of subsidy was already been taken off the budget by the previous government. Quite all right. And then you will have just let it go silently. And prepare yourself before you make that particular, why would I use the word, too hurriedly statement of this particular statement that subsidy is gone. And so it went to the market. It now put Nigerian people in a lot of problems. Those who want to cash in on it, and here is an interesting part of it. Mr. President, I would say Mr. President at the moment now, said that there are certain people that are benefiting from the hands of the majority. And I was wondering, who are these certain few? I was almost thinking that Mr. President was part of those particular few that were already been so much endowed with finances. So, and here we are. How can you create, because most of the things that goes for Mr. President on a sentimental basis was that he is a builder of men, he build in the individual. And so those particular same individual, he's the one that is going to shoot on the foot and saying that they are the ones that are in charge of certain money belonging to the few majority. it doesn't, there's no correlation in these two.
Okay.
Because to us, we feel that they are the same people.
So before we head to
Nigeria in this particular strenuous situation.
Okay, I'm going to bring Aliyu and then Dr. Pierce in Lagos, but just a minute. Dr. Stanko, does he help in any way? Because, yes, you mentioned the president's statement about fuel subsidy, how several people took advantage of it. But if you look at his speech yesterday, where he says the preceding administration saw this looming danger as well. Indeed, it made no provision in the 2023 appropriations for subsidy after June this year. So he seems to have corrected himself, having recognized what transpired last time out. So does this count for something? Probably the way he came across this time, way.
He only acknowledged the fact that he's aware that the former government has already actually removed that.
Which some people say that is what he should have said in his inaugural day and not
exactly. That's why what I said. You should have just like being even silent with already it has been established. All you needed to do is go back to the drawing board and plan on how you intend to implement good, palliative or way in which Nigerian people can survive on the old situation.
Okay, pardon me jumping. Mr. Ali, when he says, look, these few people cannot keep benefiting their elite, and so they have to take away the subsidy and then do certain things. So his narrative, his point is, are these so-called elites or whoever they are they ghosts? Why can't they be apprehended? So if subsidy is meant for the people and these other folks are diverting it, why don't you deal with the problem? It's a corruption problem and not a subsidy problem, some argue.
All right. Let me quickly say this, that, Mr. President was very specific in his, I'm particularly impressed with the choice of words in the whole of the speech yesterday. When he mentioned elite, he didn't just say elite, he said elite of the elite. And let's get something right.
And it's baseless.
They're not, but...
Why can't they be arrested?
Mr. Chamberlain, you and I remember sometime about 10, 11 years ago, when the subsidies come in, the House of Reps came up, when certain individuals, certain billionaires were fingered, and
But some of your party kicked against removal of subsidy at the time.
Yes, at the time, but we know better now, and this is what has happened, and this is what needs to happen.
So his point, why can't they be arrested, whoever they are?
While you go ahead, there are two ways to solve this problem, right? While trying to, dry up the flood, you stop the leak.
Would you like to see them arrested yourself?
Yes, that's my position. They should be arrested. But until that is done, we know how, like he said, they are very powerful.
Are there plans to get that done? Do you know?
They must be planned to get people answer questions they need to answer. It's already in process.
All right.
So, but let me quickly make this part about something he did say about how he could have, just gone into the next phase without taking care of the main problem. From now, our subsidy has been at source, meaning that when a 33,000-liter tank carries PMS from Lagos, Apapa to Katsina, we have it subsidized at the source. Vaporization happens. These are volatile substance. Vaporization happens in the sense that if a liter gets vaporized between Lagos to Apapa, what is vaporizing isn't just the cost of fuel. It includes the cost that is subsidized.
All
so
right.
it is all not
we have
working for the economy from
we have several government agencies. We have the DSS. We have several people, all established to make sure this corruption or this thievery or stealing, diversion doesn't happen. Yet it happens. They have to answer questions. But let's go to Lagos. Our colleagues there have got a guest there as well. Go ahead, guys.
Thank you, Chamberlain. We have Dr. Adetukumbo Pierce here with us this morning. He is a member, PDP National Presidential Campaign Council, and he's also Lagos State Coordinator, Atiku Okowa Presidential Campaign Support Group. Thank you for joining us this morning. Well, you've heard a lot, but your personal initial thoughts, with the president's speech of 7 p.m. yesterday.
I'm glad the president focused on the economy because that is what drives the country. And the speech was colorless, uninspiring, unimaginative. Unfortunately, to some extent, also dishonest. Let me tell you something very simple. This subsidy removal is creating so much havoc in the economy that is going to drive us into a recession. What the Chinese say is this. You learn from the philosophy of ancient cultures. The Chinese say if you want to build your economy, you build roads. All right? That means people have to be able to move. The buyer must be able to get to the point of buying. The seller must be able to get to the point of sale. Therefore, they must be able to communicate and they must be able to move. Now, with this removal of oil subsidy, we have seen what is going on in Nigeria. No movement, right? You know, it took me almost 2 hours to find a Uber to come here from Yaba. They didn't want to come. They're afraid that if they get caught up in the holdup, the cost of transportation, the cost of petrol is so high now. So it's disrupting every aspect of the economy. Therefore, no matter what we say and what we do, we have to address that issue. Removing subsidy, you're curbing one type of corruption, right? As they said, marketers. Now, where the problem is in Nigeria's economy, it's not just subsidy. All the agencies that collect for the government, they should remit money to the Federation account, NNPC, NIMASA, FIRS.
Well,
they have not been doing it. So, and inefficiency, corruption in the system is where the money is.
Well, we know that all of these issues that you've raised,
yes,
significant as they are, they predate. I mean, they go as far back as even 1999. If you know, for those who would want to look back that far back.
That is in every society.
I'm just saying,
even predates that.
I'm just saying. But you know, when you talked about the subsidy, your presidential candidate also said he was going to remove the subsidy. So this situation of subsidy removal would have happened anyway.
No, we don't know. Let us say Atiku said he's going to remove subsidy. If he came,
are you saying that he didn't say it?
If he removed, no, he did. If he removed subsidy the way Tinubu did, we'll have the same problems. Therefore, it's a question of method and approach. What we're saying is, you cannot hold Atiku or anybody accountable now.
No, I'm not. I'm just saying. Everyone said that.
This is the
but
point.
then there are those who have also argued, my apologies,
yes,
Dr. Pierce, there are those who have also argued that there is no way we would look at this same issue so long as, you know, we've depended on the subsidy regime that some people say doesn't exist for so long. There is no way that removing this subsidy will not generate the kind of, or rather, a similar kind of reaction that it is generating.
It depends on how you remove the subsidy.
How should it have been done?
It depends on the plan you have in place.
How should it have been
somebody just said it from Abuja.
Okay.
In the first place, subsidy has been removed by Buhari to some extent. Therefore, where we were already paying a high price for petrol, already 200 naira per liter almost. That was enough. So President Tinubu announcing it in the cavalier manner he did is what caused the inflation. Therefore, it shouldn't have been. Now, let me tell you something about subsidy.
Did you really read the speech?
The inflation had held sway before the president came to power, Dr. Pierce.
What inflation?
Inflation in the economy. Before he came to power,
wait,
pushing the 20% mark.
Before Tinubu came into power, how much was a liter of oil? 200. He came in, made the announcement, it went to 450. And then on and on. Now we are at 600 plus. So that's wrong. Inflation came when Tinubu came and made that announcement. Now let me tell you something about subsidy. Everybody keeps saying we must remove subsidy.
Right to say it exacerbated the inflation, but inflation had been there before he came to power.
Look, all we are saying is that our lives have become more difficult. Everything has become more expensive. There is always a challenge in every society. If you sold a liter of petrol for 60 naira, people would still say it's high. It will be high for some people.
Okay.
But now when you bring it to this level, we have a serious problem. Let me tell you something about subsidy. People keep saying you must remove subsidy. We are paying too much for subsidy. Look, every country that develops must subsidize what will engineer the economy. Petrol, if it's not available, it will kill the economy. I'm saying it now. In every country, just about 4 months ago, they had a problem with petrol price in America. The presidency had to intervene to keep the price low, because without, it is what fuels the economy. That's why I said the Chinese say, you want to develop your economy, you must build roads, you must make transportation available. Now, every aspect of life must be subsidized. In developed countries, you subsidize health, you subsidize transportation, you subsidize education.
You don't think that the interventions, the propositions of the federal government in terms of subsidizing transportation is enough? You don't think it is something
significant? You mean what Tinubu is saying now?
Yes. You don't think it is something?
If he does it, fine. Okay. Somebody has also said it, that they make these promises and there's nothing in place to show that it will happen. Now, let me tell you something about this speech. A lot of spending. A lot of, we will give money to this, we give money to that. Where is he going to get 500 acres to give to farmers when governors control the land? Number one. Number two, you are spending money, where is he going to get all this money? He has not talked in this speech on how to develop the economy. He shows he's just a bookkeeper. He's an accountant.
But
he's not an economist. How do you develop the economy? Let me tell you, in the short run, this is what you do. You go to where the leakages are to collect your money. All these millions that should be gone into the federation account that have not gone there, you must recoup them. You cannot just be taking money, saving money. You must be making money. What Tinubu has done now is, with this all subsidy, is to try to save some money. And then he keeps spending. All these things he's saying he's going to do, where is he going to get the money? If you don't collect the money that is owed the government already, FIRS, NIMASA, MPC, all of them, Post Authority, the money must come in.
You don't think
it's not talking about that.
You don't think it also just a second. You don't think it's also significant that the president said that so far we've saved 1 trillion naira from subsidy that was going to the elite of the elites, and
let me tell you
just talked about
that is another misconception. It is not the elite that is suffering now. The subsidy was not okay. You stop the elite from taking money. Which money? The money they were taking was being spent on subsidy, which was helping the ordinary masses to survive and booming the economy. This is total rubbish. It's a big error. And you will see as we go along, this is going to create a recession in this economy. Already we have a recession. Do you know that? When you don't see movement on the road, when you don't see transactions going on, when oil consumption now has gone to 28% below what it was when he took office, we have a problem. We have a 20% deficit in our economy already, and it's going to get worse. In the long run, how do you raise money? We have to increase our revenue source in Nigeria. Tinubu is not saying about that. You know how in the short run you collect monies? 20,000 properties built by the federal government. For about 10 years now, nobody is collecting ground rent. It's 6 trillion naira. 6 trillion naira owed to the federal government. That's where the money is. Don't go and take money. You're balancing your budget on the back of poor people. And not only poor people. You see, this subsidy removal is affecting 80% of Nigerians. You know why? What's the percentage of people in this your establishment that make 200,000 naira or more a year? Think about it. If you're not making 200,000 a year, you are suffering like hell in Nigeria because you cannot afford to move around. People are now leaving their cars at home.
But Dr.
And
Pierce,
the public transportation is not working. Many of them don't have AC anymore.
but Dr. Pierce, much of your reservations is what seems to have been covered by the president in his speech through these interventions that he has announced.
Which one?
You talked about, the roads. There is an infrastructure support fund that has been provided to fix the roads that are access routes to farms. There is an infrastructure support fund that has been provided to fix access roads to health institutions and education institutions. The president, in fact, also announced the provision of transportation for students in tertiary institutions. In fact, the CNG-powered buses, according to the governor of Ogun State, will be procured locally to keep the jobs and the funds at home. I would have thought that, you would be talking about how these will be executed such that there will be accountability.
Look, building roads is easy to say. My point is, where is the money going to come from when you have not developed the economy?
So it's not significant that the World Bank, there's an approved $800 million World Bank loan. You're not also comforted of the 500 million or is it billion naira approved by the House of Representatives? I
understand economics.
Okay.
The president in this speech shows he's only a bookkeeper. He is a tax collector. He doesn't know economics 101. I'm telling you. Look, so you are getting loan upon loan. This is why we're complaining about Buhari. You keep getting the loan. How do you service the loan? You know how you service the loan? In the short run. In a capitalist economy, you don't take money from what is the engine room of your economy. Oil, subsidy. You don't. You borrow more money. You raise, but as you are borrowing, you must be raising money. This is why America is owing trillions of dollars. It's a debt economy. The capitalism, that's the way it works. You can take any money, you can spend anything you want. By the way, Tinubu says this, he understands this in his protest against Jonathan in 2011, I believe. He said it. He said you don't need to save money anywhere, you just need to develop your economy. And you can borrow as much as you want. Now, in the short run, collect all what is owed the government. Tinubu must face corruption. The leakages, the waste in the oil industry, he must face that first and foremost, collect in the short run. In the long run, you must diversify the economy.
Okay, so
lithium, gold, uranium, all bitumen, all this natural. Enugu area has the 9th largest deposit of natural gas in the world.
Will the manufacturers support fund, 1 billion naira credit to manufacturers, will it address this?
Pardon?
The 1 billion naira credit to manufacturers announced by the president in his speech, will it address the development of the mineral sector that you're talking about?
No.
Why?
The president must address the issue of legal, constitutional ways of developing the economy. For instance, when we say diversify the economy, we mean that in every state, as of now, mineral resources are in the exclusive list. You cannot use it to develop your state. 1 billion, forget about that. We're talking about access to international funds, international partners, national economic development, so that the uranium we have can be used to develop the area in the northeast where the uranium is.
So
instead of allowing Boko Haram to take our uranium and send it to France. Is it
also significant, Dr. Pierce, that the president mentioned DFIs, commercial banks, and MFBs also being engaged in this conversation, because you just talked about multilateral organizations now. Anyway, we'll get back to that. Dr. Tanko, one of the issues that comes to mind when one listens to the issues that you have raised so far, I know one is just wondering exactly how, the perspective that each of these issues that you've raised, how they are being addressed. Because, for instance, part of what you said is that maybe the president is not approaching these things as holistically as one would expect. But it is clear from the very, very get-go of that speech that he was speaking to immediate economic interventions. Isn't that sufficient for you?
I feel that he was just playing to the gallery. What I simply mean here is this. There are issues that have erupted within a short period of time from his initial inauguration speech that has generated this particular big problem that we have at the moment. And in trying to solve that, he's now providing a particular, mouth-watering
Dr. Tanko, when you say that the president, just one moment, if you can hear me. When you say that the president, made a statement that's, as well, to use another word, conflagrated the economy at the behest of this administration, what preceded that speech was exactly what he repeated here in this current speech, that the previous administration did not make provisions for subsidy. So that three-word sentence, subsidy is gone, is just like a confirmation or an affirmation, call it a summary of that previous statement that he made. So are you speaking to the interpretation of the Nigerian about this, or the impact of that speech itself, or the value of the speech itself?
The impact of the speech, of what he said in the inaugural speech, caused this particular problem that we have at the moment now. Because obviously, for those who do not know, may not have been aware that the subsidy has already been removed, practically, because there was no budgetary allocation for the payment, even though you may also be aware that there are some who argue that there was no even subsidy in the first place, which all of us agree that it is a whole scam, and it was just meant to enrich certain couple of few Nigerians. And now, in that regard, what Mr. President, I said, if I can call him that in this particular situation, considering the fact that we are challenging the legitimacy of the presidency in court, we can also deduce that the statement that was already being made only aggravated the matter. He would have just let it slide while he deals with the other issues rather than putting more pang and pain on the Nigerian people. Because take a look at it. There's never a time in the history of Nigeria, anything that you make a reference to, you think that probably the fuel hike will come down, and then they are telling us about the issue of market forces and all. There's no way. The worst that you can see, even in the market forces that will affect that particular prices, its worst situation can be around 300 or 400. And that will have doubled the initial cost of the fuel that was assumed to have been subsidized to the Nigerian people. So all of these were not well planned out, well thought of. I've always said that the major problem we have, even with our leaders, are that they don't really think deep before they act.
Well, in a matter of weeks, we'll see what execution would look like. But, Mr. Tanko, that would seem that, implementation of the president's announcement, much of it is the heart of the matter. And that's where I'm headed, Mr. Aliyu, as I come to you. The president made a few pronouncements about agriculture, about how, they would deploy resources to develop farming for wheat, for rice, and for cassava. Just 2 weeks ago, the country director for the WFP, Mr. Matthias Schmil, in his observation at a program to react to the announcement of the declaration of a state of emergency on food security, noted that there are thousands of hectares of land in Nigeria that are not being farmed because the people do not feel safe to do so. What will seem to be missing, in the interventions announced by Mr. President yesterday was a provision for security to ensure that this farming is, executed to, a place of reassurance for Nigerian farmers. What are your thoughts on this? Is this speech well thought out without that provision?
All right. The speech is very well thought out, if we are being very honest and being patriotic. And I'll say this, that data don't lie, numbers don't lie. Emotions can fly here and there, but facts are facts. It stands facts after years. The president earlier had declared, emergency on food security, and he had, in that speech, he made it clear that, food security is not a matter of national security. We'll be honest with ourselves that in the past years, we've dealt with national security as if it's just militarized issues. We've looked away from all of the other challenges, economic challenges, human challenges, our integration challenges that could have resulted into this national security. Right now, we have food security, which basically takes care of the law-abiding citizens and the vulnerable in the society. And the moment they are taken care of, it becomes their responsibility to take care of the society. You find out that a whole lot of people, I remember clearly in about, was it 2003, at an interview that the late Gani Fawahimi granted on one of the national TVs, and was it prior to that, where he was talking about security, and he said, I mean, while there's kleptomanity, the fact that certain people can't feed, it's a reason why a lot of people do unholy things, including some of these things that we complain about. If we take away food security, the jobs it creates, the opportunity it provides, the confidence it gives to the people to understand that the government really cares and the society is about them. We are forgetting the fact that it's not us versus government, it is us versus the society. We are the society. If we feel that society is for us and we are for the society, the chances are that we will protect ourselves from these security issues. And, you know, it's what affects our food right now. Like
these pronouncements are immediate. Pardon me if you can hear me, Mr. Aliu. These pronouncements are immediate interventions, you know, and that supposes that they'll be happening in the short term rather than the long term. If indeed food security is a matter of national security, don't you think it should have been covered in Mr. President's address?
When he declared emergency in on food security, I think he pretty much covered that. And as at yesterday, this speech, you know, speaks to, I mean, basically the palliative, speaks to what the economic situation is like. Someone rightly said, like, one of the biggest challenges we have at hand now is, if not it is the biggest challenge, is the economy. And that's what yesterday was about. It's about telling, he has unearthed his plans to address these issues that we have. And, you know, if we understand how the system works, we understand how society works, we can tell how the implementation, I do not have anybody who has a concern about how it's going to be implemented. But to say this isn't a good enough plan, no. Let's focus our energy, let's focus our attention on how to ensure we contribute. It's not every time we attack. Let's be collaborative. Let's show that, okay, come up, you are Labour Party, you are PDP, we are all Nigerians. It affects every one of us. Nobody's gone to pump a gas station and presented ID card. Nobody's gone to anywhere and presented ID card. It's going to be a collective problem. If the government fails, we all fail. It's not like we are going to come after 8 years and say, no, let's ensure that we don't fail. The we is us, Nigeria. We don't fail by saying, okay, the plans are good. These are areas I think you should look at in implementation. These are areas we can come in to provide our...
All right, Mr. Audu, let's take on that question of patriotism that you just asked now. Dr. Pierce, so he's spoken about, you know, patriotism. Whichever government is in power, be it a PDP government, be it a Labour Party government at the federal and state levels, without collaboration, no matter how fantastic the plan is, it will not work. And at the end of the day, just as you said, it's the Nigerians in the lower rung of the ladder that will take the hit.
That's 80% of us, by the way.
Exactly. Us. Interestingly, the president also said he's one of us. So
he's not one of us. That's a lie.
Well, anyway.
Mine's a billionaire.
It's your word against his own. But no,
the point I'm making is, the point that I'm making is, Dr. Pierce,
the point that I'm making is this. In terms of patriotism, collaboration by all Nigerians, the president listed 75 manufacturing companies. He listed quite a number of institutions. He listed smallholder farmers. He listed 100,000 MSMEs. He listed nano businesses, 50,000 or thereabout of them. These are Nigerians that are going to do business and that are going to employ people. In terms of collaboration, in terms of cooperation with whatever initiative of any federal, state, or local government initiative, what would be your word to Nigerians, particularly in the light of the presidency? We understand your criticism, but at the end of the day, this is what we have for now. What do Nigerians have to do to make it work in the interest of the nation?
Let me tell you, first and foremost, believe you me, I wish President Tinubu well, especially once the tribunal is over and all of that issue is gone. We will work with him in every way. I really believed that if nothing else, Tinubu will come in and it will improve the economy. But I'm telling you, there's so many things going on that is not addressing. And it's not just patriotism of the companies that will develop the country. It's what we do in the media and people like myself. We are holding him accountable. We are making sure that he understands some of the issues that are going on, and he needs to go back and look at them. Devolution of powers to the states, so that states can come into the revenue stream and develop the economy from what they have in their own states.
So you are calling for another constitution review?
No, it doesn't. Yes, no, that constitution is a bogus constitution. The 1999 constitution, there's nothing Tinubu would do that will improve the economy of this country if he doesn't review that constitution, therefore making sure that all of these minerals at the exclusive list come back to the concurrent list so that people can use the bitumen, third largest deposit of bitumen in the world, in Ondo area, to develop. Look, the whole of Nigeria will develop. We must go back to this. So therefore, if you talk about patriotism, it is people like myself who are truthful, telling him the truth. Let me tell you something that happened. We're talking about the subsidy removal is not in the 2023 budget. You know why it's not there? Because when they went to the appropriation bill committee, they were told that it's not necessary because Dangote refinery is going to come in stream by the end of 2022. Now, Kyari is telling us that even if, by the way, he said it on this TV channel, that even if Dangote refinery comes on board, other refineries comes on board, the petrol price will not come down. The president needs to talk to that guy, query that fellow. These are the people damaging the economy and are going to make anything work for him.
Okay.
We will hold him accountable. We will tell the truth to the president.
Okay, happily so. Well, Dr. Tanko, in terms of patriotism, and I'm mentioning that because at the end of the day, we're all Nigerians. We all have a responsibility to ensure that this nation works for all of us, irrespective of party lineage, irrespective of interests or affiliations and all. At the end of the day, we all have to make this nation work for everyone. So, in terms of collaboration, particularly between the federal and state governments, Labour Party has a state. Other political parties also have a state. So it's not just the APC that is in control of any particular state. All states in the country, there are other states that are being controlled by other political parties or governed by other political parties. So in terms of collaboration, because the president mentioned that in the speech, working with states and local governments to cushion the pains, what would be your suggestions or propositions as a Nigerian and as an academic to those state governments and local governments to collaborate with the federal government so that the lives of Nigerians can be made better?
Yeah. Patriotism is key for me, but it has its own price. The price of patriotism is in how the leaders lead the people to believing in themselves. We have an issue of trust deficit, a very serious trust deficit between even going in terms of religion, in tribe of tribes, and in terms of beliefs on whoever it is in position of power. So as we are speaking right now, we have challenges of issue of legitimacy. It creates a lot of wounds in the minds of a lot of Nigerians who do not even believe that probably we'll have a government in place until one probably the judiciary made their final pronouncement on the situation. Now, will now be left for whoever is in the position of power to say, hey, look, I agree, just like Yaradua did, I agree that I had a flawed election that brought me in, or even though the judiciary have made their own pronouncement, I am now here. Let us work together. You've already made your plea. A lot of people have now come to agree with the judiciary. Okay, they made their own position. We now have to sit back. But first thing is first. We have to make sure that the leadership is in the right place. The processes that brought in is still a very flawed process that is hurting a lot of people, and they're not ready to really come down. I'm having my wristband of my presidential campaign still on my hands. A lot of people still have. And so in that regard, where do you expect them to sit back again? When instead of actually looking for situation of healing the wounds, what you are now doing is inflicting more pain. So how would they now come back and say, okay, patriotism first? Because we are seeing that history have taught us that some of these particular leaders who have found themselves in position of power have already taken this country for a ride for a very long time. We have seen people having bullion vans in their homes. Even Dangote, who seemed to be a businessman, didn't do that. And then we now have the same people now trying to tell us that there are some certain people different from the same people who have put us in this particular same mess, and then we're now asking for patriotism. No, the patriotism has not been instilled in the leaders that we have, and it has not shown clearly the clear passion and empathy to the people. The people are walloping in terms of pain and pang as I'm talking to you. And that is the reason why you saw what you see in Adamawa State. And other states who could have taken cue from that. So we need to heal the wounds as quickly as possible. And I want to believe that the judiciary will help us to deal with this particular matter, and then we can now go back to the drum bar and say, look, hey, let's look out for this particular country, because this country is bleeding.
All right, gentlemen, as we wind down on this, I mean, Ali, let me ask you. I mean, I see that the president says they've made provisions to roll out buses across states and local governments for mass transit at a more affordable rate. Then 100 billion between now and March 2024 to acquire 3,000 units of 20-seater CNG fueled buses. We do hope that these buses will be the ones assembled in Nigeria.
Yes, that's basically, if you follow the Mr. Vice President, that's exactly what's causing what's the delay. I mean, if we're going to buy easily and cheap, it probably would take 22 days, a few days would have been here right now. But we understand what the impact of having it assembled here mean to, the manufacturing business, the automobile industry, and jobs creation. I mean, having said that, just allow me quickly respond to certain things. Leadership isn't about when you're president or local government chairman or anything. Sir, you're a leader. You have a responsibility to the society. And someone said President Tinubu isn't one of us. I'll tell you for free that his son, Tinubu, who ran into me, or we ran into ourselves at a pub some years back, and out of national discussion concern, we became acquainted. And I have worked with him closely, and I have seen the spirit of the average Nigerian kid that I represent in him. Up till this minute, we talk with a whole lot of facts and emotion, as to what's going on, what the feelers out there is, what needs to be done. I mean, you don't get more Nigerian than that. You don't. It's not about how much money you have or how much money you don't have that makes you Nigerian. You don't just suddenly you don't become billionaire tomorrow and someone say they are no longer in Nigeria. No. Let's go away. I mean, the problem I have always had, and I'll be very frank about this, is the quality of people we have in politics, which is what pushed us for 8 years to create internal opposition within the party, because the opposition clearly were missing, and they have started missing again. Because what I would expect to hear from any opposition right now who has a problem with the plan to come out and say, you said there is no funding, and you have just been told that there's a 800 million naira that's been approved for it, even though it was said and you were not listening. And someone said it is a partisan. No, let's get something straight.
All right.
Let's get the best of our best in government and get our best in opposition. Come up with your plan.
All right.
A parallel plan that says, oh, you have said you are doing this. This is where we have, we think there are faults. This is what we will have done. If you do this, you convince me that you know what you are saying. Right, it is easy to complain and rant and whine. No, it doesn't solve the problem.
All right,
what we are dealing with is the solution, and the president has taken the right step, and we are headed in the right direction. And all we can do is join our heads, join our hands, and see how we can collaborate to lift us as a nation out of where we are and take us where we need to be.
All right, gentlemen, we need to anchor the point. Dr. Yunus Otanko is the chief spokesperson, Labour Party, PCC. He says he's still wearing his band. Leo Adu, member, APC Presidential Transition Committee, Council, beg your pardon, and he's of the Media Strategy Subcommittee. Gentlemen, thank you both for coming on today.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you very much.
Are you on, Buki?
Dr. Adetokunbo PS, your last words, 30 seconds.
The president must go back to the drawing board and look at all the issues. he has good ideas, but I think that is approaching the whole economy as if we have a village economy. It's a big country. You are buying buses. How are the buses going to run? Government is not in the business of buying buses for people. Total, it's not going to work. If the buses cannot afford petrol, if the price of petrol is high, cost of busing will be expensive. How do you maintain these buses? So what we have to do is to learn from developed economies. You want to develop transportation, you have a regional, sub-regional arrangement whereby the states come together and develop a system where they run their transportation.
Okay.
So these are the things that I would advise the president to do.
Okay.
So he needs to go back, take a good look, let economists deal with this issue.
Okay.
Mr. President, don't think because you were able to raise the IGR in Lagos, you are going to solve the economy problem of Nigeria. This is beyond you.
Okay.
Go to the specialists, let them advise you, and we should always hold the powerful people to account.
Okay, even though, I mean, as usual, I mean, you're very correct. Now that we have ministers coming in, some of them economists, hopefully they'll be able to assist. But by the way, those buses are supposed to run on CNG, all 3,000 of them. Dr. Adetumbo appears and is a member of PDP National Presidential Campaign Council and Lagos State Coordinator, Atiko Kowa Presidential Campaign Support Group. Thank you so much for your time this morning.
Thanks for having me.
All right, another funny issue that's been of interest is that much talked about protests. That's up in a moment. Just stay with us.
We decided to adjourn this meeting till 12 noon tomorrow. Before, I guess, Labour can decide whether or not they want to continue with their protests on Wednesday. But we believe that after tonight's broadcast, the president will speak to all the issues. He will roll out his interventions, and needless to say, we believe any reasonable person will tell you that at that point there will be no need for any protest.
Well, our peaceful rally will go on as scheduled. You know, even if we didn't have this problem and we decide to hold a rally, we'll still hold our rallies. So this rally has been fixed for 2nd, and we'll go ahead to hold our rally.
Welcome back. Yes, Ambassador Nkoyotoyo joins us next. She's a co-convener and chief spokesperson of Labour and Civil Society Front, LCSF. Good morning, and thank you for coming on today.
Thank you very much for having me.
Well. So, yes, in light of the president's speech, the message we just heard from the chief of staff, the Labour president, and I see that organized civil society is backing Labour for this, they're declaring August 2nd, Citizens Action Day. So, strike, we know they've spoken about strike, now there's a rally. Is there still a need for this, considering the president's speech and perhaps what the chief of staff also did say there?
Well, thank you. And absolutely, I think it's indicative of the fact that if the strike, or the protest did not come up, and the language keeps on changing. We are not on a strike, we are now on a protest. If that didn't happen, we would probably not hear from the president. It's indicative of that. And I think that's not a bad thing in itself, that the president is responding to the fact that the citizens are concerned. I think to that extent we can say that he's listening at least to the concerns. But it also goes to the point that needs to be made as to whether he has actually addressed the concerns of the people whom he was listening to. It's one thing to speak to the nation, it's another thing to speak to the nation on the issues that are before the nation.
Do you think he has?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. And I must say that with the greatest respect to the Honorable Chief of Staff, Mr. President did rail out a couple of things which we have heard in the past and have heard even more ambitious plans in the past. And what we heard yesterday was nothing.
So what is the key issue for you?
What is what?
What are the key issues?
Well, the key issues for us, first and foremost, is that we're dealing here with massive corruption. Massive corruption in the sense that the subsidy thing is a scam. We know the arguments are all there in the space, in the public space. I don't need to talk about them again. And the president spends, I think, the first 7 or 8 paragraphs of his presentation talking about those who have benefited from the subsidy, and doesn't say a word about what will happen to the benefits that have come out, and rather goes down later on to tell us that he's recovered trillions in the last 2 months from the subsidy, and he will spend a couple of billions on it on us, and things go as they had always gone. There's absolutely nothing we have seen, with the greatest respect to the president, in his speech that suggests to me that we are into anything different from what we've seen in the past.
There are different schools of thought on some of these matters. Some think if the president goes ahead and says, because something, well, maybe he doesn't want to mention those who are perhaps maybe the suspects in the subsidy fraud in the same breath as to his plans and programs to move the nation forward and ensure people can feed the vulnerable and every other person have it all easy, considering the removal of the subsidy. Because if he does that, that has a potential of distracting from what he wants to focus on to deliver. So if he does this, goes ahead, implements this policy, and then much later comes back to address the question of those who are guilty of this, will that help? Or should he, in the same breath, yes, we'll go after these people, but here's what we're doing for the people?
The challenge of doing that is that he gives us up to March next year. New elites, people who will benefit from a system that is embedded in corruption, will emerge, and the cycle will continue. I do not agree with the logic of that. Here is Mr. President going after the former central bank governor, even appointing someone to look into the happenings within the CBN itself.
Yeah.
If he could do that with one man, how much more a system that has existed over several years, continues to exist in many forms, determining the price of the PMS, because we still do not know under what template this PMS is being determined. Some say it's still being done by the NNPC itself. There are many other players in the field. We're still hearing of importation. We've not heard a word about what's going to happen to the refineries. I think there's a lot of unmet conversations. I think what I found a little bit disconcerting about the presentation yesterday was when even Mr. President, admitted himself that he didn't have other choices than what he presented to us. The president has reached his limit. He said so. This is all I can give you. I wish I didn't have to cause you so much pain, but this is the pain I can cause you.
What do you think about what he says? Sadly, there was an unavoidable lag between subsidy removal and these plans coming fully online. However, we are swiftly closing the time gap. I plead with you to please have faith in our ability to deliver and in our concern for your well-being. Does this count for something?
I may sound a little bit arrogant here. My work and years of experience has been in the area of governance. He doesn't have the structure on ground. The last speaker just spoke about the constitutional reform and all of that. That may be a long-term thing. But he's talking about working with local governments. Many states do not even have a local government in place. He's talking about working with states. I have not heard one state say, I understand what is going to happen in terms of this subsidy. This is all Mr. President speaking to himself.
No, but some people will say that if you haven't, sorry to interrupt you there, the state, I mean, we've seen 1 or 2 states. We heard Ogun State come up with a plan. Yesterday, we heard the Lagos State government talk about what they intend to do with transportation might be insufficient, but at least there is some talk in that particular area. But I want to
has a plan too.
Yeah, so we're beginning to hear, states coming up with their plans individually. I mean, Adamawa state government also did say something, but let me take you up on this speech, because indeed, I mean, some of the concerns that you have raised are what Labour has also raised in their response to the speech. They've talked about the fact that the president was silent on refineries and when they will come on board. He's talked about the fact that you've talked about how the president hasn't said whether he's going to be going after this elite of the elite, which he referred to as being, as being very, very powerful, even to the point where they can threaten a democratic process. So while that is, all there, and Labour has said, you haven't said how you're going to go about that, Mr. President, but looking at another issue which they raised, Labour says that the federal government has, beg your pardon, furthermore, organized Labour has disturbed that while President Tinubu in his speech lavishly praised the private sector for quickly dispensing wage awards to their employees, the federal government has failed to do same for public workers in its employment. It's open knowledge that the review of the national minimum wage is a matter of law, which is expected to happen in 2024. How would Nigerian workers cope with the current reality of hyperinflation and suffering unleashed by the hasty removal of the so-called petrol subsidy to 2024 when the national minimum wage will be reviewed? This is incredible. I mean, that's the statement of Labour now. But some people will say that the president did not mention any time frame within which, that review would come. He speaks of... let me quickly see if I can find that part where he says...
I think what Labour is alluding to, there's been already a process ongoing in terms of the review of salaries, of minimum wage. That has been ongoing for a while. And I think it was expected to be sort of consummated or summarized or reached some sort of agreement by next year, early next year or something. So in actual sense, that process was already being unbundled, So it's nothing out of, it's not necessarily an outcome of this removal of subsidy. But now it has become an integral part of it. So I think that's the point in which they're trying to make.
Yeah, they're being totally honest when they say that, because some people will say, oh, look, it's in the speech. I mean, they were saying something to the effect that it wasn't even mentioned. The president here says, in the same vein, we're also working in collaboration with the labor unions to introduce a new national minimum wage for workers. I want to tell our workers this, your salary review is coming. Once we agree on the new minimum wage and general upward review, we will make budget provision for it for immediate implementation. So is Labour being totally honest when they say that, oh, Mr. President, you haven't said when it is that, our salaries are going to be reviewed or when, there'll be an increment?
The thing about the speech is that the speech puts us into a certain sort of time frame. And you started by talking about the lag of time between when implementation and the actual impact of this begins to hit. There's a March timeline, but in terms of those changes in the salary, we haven't heard exactly when it's going to happen. I will not be saying that I entirely understand what the real point about dates are, but I understand the sense in which that is being made. If I had already been discussing with the Buhari government that by such and such a time, and this was already agreed and laid out, this question of the minimum wage will be resolved. And now you come and say to me that point is being considered again. It is probably the point is, are we going to hear it before the time that was already set for this to happen? Or is it something that is being anticipated?
Well, we know that usually minimum wage is reviewed every 5 years. That's
absolutely that's the point.
That's what usually happens. Yes. But we also know that right now Labour is in talks with federal government over adjustments that need to be made as a result of this removal. So if they are currently in talks and Labour does acknowledge that indeed they are, and we've seen visuals of them being in talks, is it really honest to say, look, there's no sign on the horizon for this minimum wage review which you're talking about?
Well, let me put it this way. I think it's a matter of language here. It's a matter of language in the sense that one sees it as we're already doing it. We had already been doing it. And the other one says, I'm going to do it. But neither has said this is how long or how soon it will happen. So I guess it's not a question of honesty. I think it's a question of where the language of prioritization comes in, yeah.
Are you disappointed, though, that this statement seems to be short on sacrifices? Because some people have also said that part of what the people are also expecting to hear from government is, the sacrifices that leaders intend to make to also show that they understand what the people are going through. And the president keeps telling Nigerians, I feel your pains, I feel your pains. But then people have also asked, as to Mr. President, precisely how are you feeling our pains and what sacrifices need to be made in that area to show that the president really feels the pains of the people?
I think sacrifices is probably a less. It doesn't quite convey the concerns that people have in regards to that point. I think it's the absence of goodwill. It's the absence of goodwill completely. You cannot be asking people to make the kinds of sacrifices. And listen, this is touching families. It's really hurting. I think all of us agree. Mr. President himself agrees. This is hurting families. And people are making really, really hard sacrifices. The consequences of this is huge because we haven't yet known what's happening. We're beginning to see some of the possible indications of where people may be going. We saw what happened in Adamawa when people ran into warehouses, NEMA warehouses, and started picking up things. And now we are having to protect NEMA warehouses across the country and all of that. We do not yet have the full picture of what's going on. So sacrifice in itself is probably not a strong enough word. I hope I could find a stronger word, because the point in question is that there seems to be a sort of disaggregation between the understanding of where the sufferings of the people are and the kinds of positionalization of things where you look at where the government itself is sitting on. You did hear the comment, of course, about the way in which the National Assembly itself looked at the arguments which were being made about the sufferings of the people. So there is genuinely a feeling among Nigerians that not enough is being done to deal with the enormity of what we are faced with. And I think that it's a bigger thing than sacrifice. Honestly, I still continue to think that we are yet to feel that there is an understanding about the level of pain.
What would you like to see in that area?
In terms of the sacrifices? Oh, definitely a cut down in the cost of governance. Absolute cut down. We haven't heard a word about that. What have we lost? What has been given up? We're still buying cars. I mean, cars is just symbolic of the bigger question or the bigger picture. We're still having political office holders appoint 30, 20 personal aides, of which all is brought back onto the economy. We are paying for it indirectly from the so-called savings that we are making now. So we haven't seen a correlationship. And it is the fact that the president, spends about 3-4 paragraphs of his presentation yesterday to direct our attention to that same elite class and what that elite process has meant to the country. And the failure, at the same time, of giving us any indication at all that something needs to be done. There is a tie in all of this, there is a tie. And that's the point that has been made over and over. But I think the point also that I need to say here is that we ourselves do not quite understand why did we have, in the middle of a negotiation that was going on, to raise the cost of the PMS by 70 naira just overnight. The prices went up from 540, was it, to 617. Meanwhile, negotiations were ongoing. Discussions were going on. This is the insensitivity that bothers us.
That's another kettle of fish. But let's quickly take this conversation to Lagos. I think my colleagues have questions for you.
Yes, indeed. Thank you, Malkwe. And, that's where I'm headed exactly. The difficulty that Labour seemed to have in achieving much with the negotiations. You rightly observed that, while the negotiations were on, the Nigerians witnessed another hike in the pump price of fuel. And, that trust deficit is also evident with the reactions of Nigerians to Mr. President's speech. But what would you say to Nigerians who also think that what would Labour achieve with the planned protest anyway, if it's been difficult for Labour to come up with something significant through the negotiations? Those Nigerians who think that Labour has, disappointed them through the months and, in fact, through the years, every time it has to represent their interests with government.
Let me start by saying that I don't think Labour has disappointed people over the years and over the months with this negotiation. One of the reasons why subsidy has not gone this early, every government has tried to take the subsidy or remove it. It has been largely the work of Labour. It has been largely the work of organized civil society and people who come in there to say, look, this is one thing that is important to Nigerians. We need to keep it. And over the years, too, the government has tried to come up with what it calls palliatives of one form or the other, which hasn't worked. So to that extent, I think there is something there to be said for Labour. But for the protest that is being planned, in the first case, if Labour didn't come up with a planned protest, we probably wouldn't have seen the attempt which was made yesterday by Mr. President to give us some sort of direction in terms of what his thinking was. Now we know where his thinking is. We still see that there is a huge gap between what his thinking is and what the expectation of Nigerians are. It is our legitimate duty and right as citizens of this country to say, Mr. President, this is not good enough. We expect a lot more from you, and to continue to add and put pressure on government to do that which will serve the ordinary citizens. I do not think the speech that was made yesterday addresses our concerns. We just talked about sacrifices. We just talked about the insensitivity, the fact that in the middle of a negotiation, there were hikes. Hopefully now the government knows that it is not acceptable for them to be negotiating and at the same time to be changing the goalpost. So there are many things which we are already putting out there, which hopefully we will hear from the president and hopefully hear from the government in terms of what we disagree with and what we think needs to happen in the course of time. For the ongoing protest for tomorrow, I think we also recognize the fact that if this was not before the government, we probably would not be having some of the details that were laid out and which the president speaks to. So it's an important part of the conversation that needs to happen. It's called accountability to some extent. If you say something, it is the duty of citizens to rise up and say, look, what you have said is not good enough, and we need to see you do much more. And I'm sure the president understands this perfectly well, that this is not about just wanting to counter what government has said. It is also about doing what the citizens think is in their best interest and in the best interest of the generality of Nigerians. We haven't seen the goodwill, we haven't seen the sacrifices, we haven't seen the language of a government that is willing and ready to give us new ideas of what needs to happen in order for the country to begin. We still haven't even seen where the turnaround in the economy, which he talks about that will long-term, other than the removal of subsidy, we do not understand what the long-term value, that addition that is coming out of this.
I imagine that several people who are embarking on this protest are patriotic Nigerians. They're concerned, and that's why they want to get their voices heard. Mm-hmm. But there's this concern as well. I don't know if you thought about it, what the group plans to do about it. The challenge we always have when people just want to say peaceful protests, you have infiltration and they tend to blame the organizers and the like. So what kind of consideration is the group giving to that?
Well, to start with, I think what the group is doing is clearly something that has happened here in Abuja many times. People do work up to the National Assembly or somewhere and make a statement as to what they want to see and what they believe in. The responsibility of the safety of those who make that statement and the other people who come into it is the business of government. Government needs to know the complexity of society. It's not our business to start asking, is that person passing on the street a hoodlum or not a hoodlum? We are, as citizens of this country, we have a right to make the protest, to be part of that protest. But at the same time, we expect that government itself has a responsibility to protect us. It is a duty. If there are hoodlums, hoodlums are citizens of Nigeria. Something created the hoodlums. And it is part of the responsibility of government to care for the hoodlums. I mean, we use that language all the time, as though those hoodlums are not citizens of Nigeria. What has turned Nigerians into hoodlums? We need to answer the question at some point. And this is the responsibility of the state. They have to protect us. and the rights that we have to protest and be on the streets.
So basically, this is a protest, not a strike.
Oh, absolutely not a strike. The strike process is a labor business. It's a language of labor. This is the language of citizens saying, Mr. President, we have not seen the magic bullet or whatever. We have not seen what we expect to see in terms of where we're going with the economy, where we're going with the cost of governance, cost of governance, cost of governance. Absolutely important. Where you're dealing with those who have denied us access to subsidy, which you have removed because it is a fraud. We haven't seen that as well. And we haven't seen enough of how what is being presented will impact on the citizens of the country.
All right, Ambassador Nkoyotoyo, co-convener and chief spokesperson, Labour and Civil Society Front, LCSF. Thank you for coming on this morning.
Thank you too for having me.
All right, we do have some messages that have come through. Festus says the palliative rolled out by President Tinubu is good, but not enough, as households will still face challenges. Now that oil subsidy is gone, he must focus on growing our economy, create better paid jobs and opportunities across the country. He must also ensure our national debt falls so that we can have more money for education and health.
Oshinawa Kingsley says, beautiful speech from Mr. President, and we appreciate his concerns, but he fails to tell us how crude oil will be refined locally. That will reduce the price of petroleum products, strengthen our currency, increase our foreign reserve, create jobs, among other benefits.
Well, Professor Inakena says Tinubu's nationwide broadcast approving 100 billion naira for 300 CNG buses should be properly invested in cars, SUVs, estate vehicles, and mass transit vehicles or buses that are wholly Nigerian from innocent vehicles. Be giving appropriate time, approval, and assistance to deliver. This will help in sustainability of local industries, review multiple taxation, review the workers' salaries, help generate domestic finance and monies that will help improve our exports to generate employment that are domesticated. And he goes on and on with his recommendations. But that's much we can honestly take. Yeah, we're totally out of time.
Absolutely. We saw your mail as well, Hussein, talking about Labour needing to halt the protest, but that's too much we can take now. We're completely out of time. Have a wonderful rest of your day and month. I'm Ayo Makinde.
And thank you so much for watching. We'll be back again tomorrow. I am Bukola Koka.
I'm Mao Yusuf. Thank you.
And I am Chamberlain Uso. Goodbye.